Kia ora. I'm Earth Sciences New Zealand meteorologist Chris Brandolino with the 2025-2026 Southwest Pacific Tropical Cyclone Outlook. Now, Earth Sciences New Zealand coordinated this tropical cyclone outlook, which was contributed by the Meteorological Services of New Zealand, Met Service, as well as the University of Newcastle and meteorological services across the Pacific Islands. And we bring to you this outlook. So let's get to it. Here are the key messages as I go full frame and disappear. We are expecting normal to below normal activity across the Southwest Pacific as a whole. Now, the long-term average, what we call climatology, is roughly around 9 named tropical cyclones. We're expecting anywhere from 5 to 9, hence that normal to below normal activity. Of those 5 to 9 named tropical cyclones, anywhere from 2 to as many as 4 severe tropical cyclones are expected. A severe tropical cyclone is a category 3 or higher. Keeping in mind the scale goes from 1 at the low end to 5 at the high end. For New Zealand, we are describing the risk for at least one ex-tropical cyclone to impact the country as normal or elevated. And there will be, we feel, significant differences between the western half and the eastern half of the basin due to things like an emerging La Nina. So, coming back on screen, let's talk about some of the risk profiles across the Southwest Pacific. So mind your color bar, right? So the warmer colors, that's where the risk is higher or grows. And the cooler colors, that risk generally gets less. So let's go group by group. We're going to start off with the Vanuatu and New Caledonia and New Zealand, groups. This is where we are describing the risk for tropical cyclones as normal to elevated. That's in the orange. So again, mind that color bar. As we go over toward the central part of the Pacific, the Southwest Pacific anyway, Fiji, we're describing that risk as normal. And continuing over towards, say, Tokelau, Tonga, over toward Tuvalu, Papua New Guinea, the Solomons, we are describing that risk as normal to reduced. So you can see normal to reduced. Keep in mind, reduced doesn't mean zero. Normal to reduced is that seasonal outlook for tropical cyclones. All right, other locations, other island groups such as Samoa, Niue, the Southern Cooks, we are describing that as reduced. There you can see right there. And last but not least, areas like the Marquesas, over toward Line Islands and Kiribati, Northern Cooks, we are describing that as unlikely for tropical cyclone development during the upcoming season. So let's look at the number of tropical cyclones a bit more specifically. So we're going to go, again, island group by island group. And what you want to do is, again, focus on the color bar. So you can see areas in yellow, that's anywhere from 0 to 1. You get up to the red, that's 3 to 4. So let's start off with areas like Vanuatu and New Caledonia. We are expecting anywhere from 3 to 4 tropical cyclones, named tropical cyclones, this upcoming season. As we go over toward Fiji, that is anywhere from 2 to 3 named tropical cyclones during the upcoming season. Now, keep in mind, even though the season runs from November to April, it's almost always that the back half of the season, February and March especially, that is where the activity is greatest. That is where we find the most tropical cyclones when we look at history. That's because ocean temperatures are warmest and other meteorological atmospheric factors come together that favor tropical cyclone development. All right, then, over toward northern New Zealand, as we said, for this coming season, we are looking for at least one ex-tropical cyclone. That risk is normal to elevated, 1 to 2, and that includes the Solomons and Tonga. And going a little bit farther to the east and for the rest of the Southwest Pacific, you can see the areas in yellow, including Marquesas, over toward Society Islands, Southern Cooks, Samoa, Niue, Tuvalu. You can see, and again, Papua New Guinea, that is described as 0 to 1. So that's why they have a reduced or unlikely risk. So that is, again, the expected number of tropical cyclones this upcoming season. So what's going on? What are the drivers? What went into this tropical cyclone outlook? Well, for starters, we look at what's called analogs. Analogs help us understand the conditions we're seeing now, and especially the conditions we're seeing in the lead up to the tropical cyclone season, so late winter into early spring. how does that compare to other seasons? And you try to find similarities. So here is the early and late season. This is ocean temperatures. This is a prediction of ocean temperature, sea surface temperature anomalies. And you can see this is La Nina. This is cooler than average ocean temperatures across the central and eastern Pacific Ocean, kind of sneaking into the western side too. You can see that. Cooler than usual ocean temperatures are not a friend of a tropical cyclone. Tropical cyclones love warm water. Generally speaking, at least 26, 27 degrees Celsius, that will sustain a tropical cyclone. And what we're looking at here is the expectation of unusually cool ocean temperatures over the central and eastern part of the basin. And as we look ahead into the second half, so this is, again, November, December, and January, what we call early season. If we go to the late season, that's February, March, and April, Feb, March, April, you can see that signal still, that signal and signature, I should say, still persists over the tropical Pacific. This is, again, a hallmark of La Nina. Notice while there are cooler temperatures, cooler ocean temperatures forecast over the central and eastern part of the basin, over toward the Coral Sea in this area, this is where we are expecting warmer than average sea surface temperatures. And that is likely to be around all season long. And that is part of our thinking. That helped form the thinking of where there could be some enhanced activity. And it's no coincidence this area from New Caledonia into, say, Vanuatu, that is where we're expecting perhaps some elevated activity across this part of the Southwest Pacific. So that's one facet to this, is the emergence of La Nina, and that tends to favor increased activity basically along and west of the date line. That's not really a good date line, is it? But you get the idea. Somewhere in here. Nope, that's still not a good date line. There it is. That's a much better date line. So basically west of this date line, if there's going to be increased or unusually high activity, this is the place we think it'll be over areas to the west and to the east. That is where activity is likely to tick down in terms of compared to the long-term average. All right, well, how are things shaping up right now? Let's have a look at ocean temperatures. And this goes back to late August. And as I bring this into motion, you can see the models are doing a pretty good job. We are recording this, I should say, on the 16th day of October. So mid-October, we are recording this, and you can plainly see that this is observed. So this is actually what's happened, or what is happening, and that is unusually cool sea surface temperatures over the central and eastern Pacific. And when you compare that to what is forecast, it does jive pretty well. So that gives us some confidence, right? In terms of what that means for air pressure, well, let's have a look at this. So this is one way we can kind of understand what will be coming our way. So for the early season, again, the early season is November, December, January, and zooming out just a little bit, the expectation is because of those cooler than usual ocean temperatures over the central and eastern Pacific, that is going to promote or favor higher than normal air pressure. So again, what we're looking at here is the prediction of where air pressure is expected to be unusually high. That's the red or the warm colors, or where air pressure is expected to be unusually low. That is the blue or the cool colors. And it's kind of a proxy to where there may be a favored area for tropical cyclone development. Keep in mind, this is a 3-month period, so there will be differences week to week, day to day. But when you smooth things out, this is the forecast for a 3-month period of November, December, and January. So you can see areas over the Coral Sea, over toward New Caledonia. That's closer to the blue, isn't it? So that makes sense. Let's go second half of the season, late season, and look at that. You can see, can you see, we'll play spot the difference. Can you see how those blues really do start to become more profound and more pronounced over the Coral Sea and over the areas that we are expecting anywhere from normal to elevated activity across the western part of the basin? Remember, we talked about differences from west to east? Well, this really explains and really articulates why. You can still see we have that red over the central and eastern part, basically east of the date line. and that is telling us higher than usual air pressure is favored. That doesn't bode well for tropical cyclone development, whereas farther to the west, where we see lower than normal air pressure favored, that does bode well for tropical cyclone development, which feeds into our and shapes our, informs our thinking as to why we're likely to have this gradient of reduced activity farther east and somewhat elevated activity farther west, generally speaking. So what about rainfall? Again, we can use rainfall as a proxy for understanding where things may become, where the odds are tilted for reduced or enhanced activity. So let's go to that right now. And again, we're starting off with the early season, November, December, and January, this 3-month period as a whole. And this is rainfall anomaly. So where you see the green, that is a prediction of enhanced or unusually wet unusually wet conditions, or positive rainfall anomalies, wetter than usual, to put it simply. And where you see the brown, that is where drier than usual conditions are forecast. Look, it's no coincidence where we saw the red, right, over the central and eastern part of the Pacific. You see that? And where we're looking at that's higher than usual air pressure, and where we're looking at the rainfall, it's no coincidence this area is looking at a reduction of rainfall. So there could be some issues with drought and water security. That would be something we'll have to watch for parts of the Pacific if this does pan out. But you can see also over the Coral Sea and over places west of Fiji and New Caledonia and Vanuatu how there is enhanced rainfall, wetter than usual conditions. And that continues into the second half of the season, Feb, March, and April. And you can see how that green, this is something that that kind of sort of stuck out, is you can see how we do have these sort of, these loose connections coming from the north pointing toward New Zealand, especially that second half of the season. So we'll have to watch, obviously, any time during the tropical cyclone season, a tropical cyclone can form, but it's that second half, as I mentioned earlier, where tropical cyclones are most likely to form and historically do form most frequently. So they're sort of bunched up in that, late January, especially Feb, March, early April timeframe. That is when they're most likely to form when you look at weather history, or what we call climatology. And one other tool we can use to help understand this, again, there is the rainfall. So when we look at that and we look at the air pressure, you can see they really do line up nicely. And so one thing that's worth mentioning, this is actually quite important, is that a tropical cyclone is an area. It is not a point. So the effects of tropical cyclones or ex-tropical cyclones can be felt many hundreds of kilometers away from the actual center of the tropical cyclone. Things like large waves, beach erosion, things like coastal inundation. And of course, if an ex-tropical cyclone or tropical cyclone is closer to you, then impacts such as high wind, heavy rain, and flooding can cause significant impacts. Don't get caught up with categories. Category 1 or 2 tropical cyclones can produce significant impacts, especially flooding. That is typically the number one hazard with tropical cyclones, is water, full stop. And that could be water from storm surge or storm inundation, your storm tide, that is the big waves, the low pressure and the wind kind of piling up water, bringing that on shore, or simply heavy rain. So water is almost always the number one hazard with tropical cyclones. Please follow the advice. If there are tropical cyclones in your area, follow the advice of the National Met Agency for watches and warnings. There are tropical cyclone outlooks that are issued, 3 to 5 day outlooks from Fiji Met, from Met Service New Zealand, and they provide a bit more heads up as to what may be coming down the pike if you're planning trips into the Pacific, whether that's on boat or on holiday or traveling in the Pacific. They provide advice for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 days as to if tropical cyclones are likely to form, and if so, where that may be. So in summary, going back to our key messages and going full frame, normal to below normal activity is expected, anywhere from 5 to 9 named tropical cyclones, of which 2 to 4 of those are expected to be a severe tropical cyclone. That's Category 3 or higher. The risk for New Zealand for at least one ex-tropical cyclone is described as normal to elevated, and those significant differences between the western half and the eastern half of the basin. I'm Earth Sciences New Zealand meteorologist Chris Brandolino. If you want to read of the Southwest Pacific Tropical Cyclone Outlook, we used to be called NIWA as an organization, but we merged with GNS, and we're now called Earth Sciences New Zealand, so head to our website. However, you can still type in Tropical Cyclone Outlook and NIWA into a search engine, and that will direct you to the Southwest Pacific Tropical Cyclone Outlook. Be safe and be informed. Again, Earth Sciences meteorologist Chris Brandolino. We'll see you next time. Namahi Nui.